Welcome to Tales About the Table, where we explore the stories, challenges, and creative chaos of TTRPGs, but mostly D&D. I'm Elijah.
I'm Jack.
And I'm Josiah. Together, we discuss the art of DMing, character building, and making unforgettable moments at the table.
Each episode, we break down a different aspect of tabletop gaming, sharing our experiences, lessons learned, and maybe a few funny failures along the way. Whether you're a seasoned DM or you're just rolling your first set of dice, there's always more to learn about collaborative storytelling.
Sometimes we talk about how to play TTRPGs, the rules, the setup, and everything in between.
Sometimes we talk about how to be better people and communicators, and therefore, better players.
And sometimes we talk about our own misadventures and the lessons that we've learned from the worlds we've created.
But most importantly, we love telling great stories together.
So pull up a chair and join us as we share another of our many tales about the table. Hello, and welcome back to Tales About the Table. I am your host, Elijah, joined as always by Jack and Josiah. Today, we are talking about something in our TTRPGs that isn't always there, but we have had some experience with. We're talking about main characters. Now, the wonderful thing about stories is that some of the best ones out there have amazing main characters that we know and love. One of the biggest problems in Dungeons and Dragons is when a main character pops up out of nowhere and ruins everybody else's game because we are trying to tell a collaborative story, not one person's dream scenario. And I think that is kind of the basis or the like starting point of where this conversation comes from, of like, what do we do with main characters in D&D? Should they be there? Should they not? And a lot of people, I think the majority of people are kind of like, no, main characters in D&D bad. Absolutely get that out of my games. And so I think that let's start about let's kind of start there. Yeah, what are some of the issues, the problems, the downside of when a main character comes out at your TTRPG session in your game? What are some of the concerns there? What are some of the challenges that sort of pop up?
Yeah. I can start with a few. I feel like main characters often have this, the horror stories you read. I'll admit I enjoy a good Reddit horror story, especially about D&D, and it's like, oh, this player did this or whatever. And I actually, before we got on here, I was looking at just a few because I was like trying to remember some of them. And most of the time, the horror story kind of surrounds the idea of like, there, is often special privileges from the DM given to a character. The story revolves around them. It's like, oh, think about like Harry Potter is a very clear main character. The whole story revolves around him being the chosen one who defeated the Dark Lord as a baby. And, this Dark Lord that every wizard in all of magical Britain was terrified of, shaking in their boots. This baby defeated him. And it's like, and now the whole story is about how he's like going to do it again, essentially. And, he's always set apart from everybody else. He's got the scar and, he can talk to snakes and he, that's your main character. He's incredibly connected to the world, incredibly
Spoilers
connected
for
to
Harry
the
Potter,
main
by the way, if you
plot line.
haven't read it
I
yet.
haven't said any spoilers. All of this you learn within like the first book.
No, it's
not
still
We
even.
didn't know we talked to snakes until way into the first one.
exactly.
No,
That's in the
it's like the
second.
first. Yeah, it's like the second chapter.
They don't realize that he's like talking to snakes. Like they brush it under the rug. It's like,
I
oh,
didn't
he's
even
just
use
magical.
the name.
We didn't even
Yeah.
know who Voldemort
Parseltongue,
was
and we know
till
that.
way later. He's this like big evil bad guy.
We should not. We always are. Spoiler alerts way too late for
Mhm.
very old series.
For
Harry
stuff that
Potter
you
came out
should
so
have
long
seen
ago.
already. Anyway, yeah. So in Harry Potter, clear main character. Now let's transfer that into D&D. You are playing with other people at the table, and your character always has to be the most special, the most different, the most having, I defeated a dragon when I was a baby, and this was the most evil dragon in all the world that everyone recognizes. It's like, oh man, you really got main character syndrome going on over there, is often what it's called. And that idea of like everything needs to be about me. And if somebody else at the table is having a moment where like they are crying with their loved one, as they pass, I'm in the, trying to bring it back to me and be like, well, I don't really care that they're dying because I found this thing over here, and or we should just move on, whatever, get over it, like always trying to kind of refocus the spotlight onto themselves. And that's obviously the bad side of main characters, like, wow, okay, there are other people playing this game. Can we, have just genuine or normal decency to let somebody else have a moment? Um, yeah, I'm sure that you guys can add more onto that, but that is what I think of when I think of like, oh, horror stories of main characters.
I think it definitely can tie the DM's hands a little bit too. With like, okay, I and I have to do what this character wants. There's not really any other option. Like, even if I
Mm.
try to put the spotlight on a different one of the characters, it's like I'm forced. Like I'm forced to do this one, and sometimes maybe even the party members themselves who recognize that there's a main character won't let you. They'll be like, you'll be like, okay, do we want to go do your thing, character number 2? No, we can't. Character number 1 is still going through crisis. Well, this is much more important. We have to do this. And it's like, okay, well, I guess we'll just keep going that way. Like I have a whole story built out for your character as well, but guess we're just continuing to follow character 1 because they decided that their thing was the most emotionally pulling and all of the other characters fell for it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think there's obviously, things that it just anytime you're taking someone else's ability to to act the way that they want to play in a way that gives them freedom, that takes any sort of their own liberties, it's just not great. Especially like just yeah, it's just not great.
Yeah. I think one really interesting thing, because Jack, you brought up Harry Potter, I will continue to do spoilers for it at this point. But like one of the big things is Harry Potter is constantly in his life. Like, I did not ask to be the chosen one. Like, can I actually please get rid of this? Like, please stop worshiping me. And like, I feel like that is kind of what you want a little bit more in D&D, of like, if something keeps happening to a character, you hope that at some point they're like, could the bad things stop happening to
Oh,
me?
yeah, honestly.
Right?
Mhm.
And there is this place where I think as a DM, it can also be super dangerous, if you have a main character. And a lot of times I feel like a main character emerges when somebody has a strong personality at the table, in a table full of people that don't have a super strong personality or are playing characters without a super strong personality. And you kind of just get one person that's always like, well, I guess we should go this way. And they are obviously always going to do what they want to do to some extent. And so the wonderful thing that we kind of mentioned briefly before we started recording was like, this is horrible if that PC then dies, because then you have a bunch of players that are like, well, now what do we do? Um and
We
so
need a
there
new
is,
character to follow.
yeah,
Somebody
Mhm.
find we're gonna walk into the local tavern and just find the strongest looking guy and
yeah,
ask him what he's doing next.
yeah.
Mhm.
And I think that is something that one of this is kind of like an underlying issue when you have a main character, is that you typically don't have super strong, motivated, or bought in secondary characters. Your
Mhm.
surrounding cast is either A, not connected to the world, B, not like bought into the campaign that you're playing in. And so
Yeah.
you get a spot where,
Or they could be and are just really upset that this
yeah,
character keeps getting the spotlight.
yeah. And I think that scenario that you're talking about is the horror story, right? Of the, I'm really tired of this guy who keeps ruining my campaign and he keeps ruining my life and it's horrible and nothing good is happening. But the times when you have a main character that just emerges and you kind of get the, I didn't want to be the main character, but no one else will do anything unless I say, let's go this way. Like,
Yeah.
you know, I've tried talking to the party and it's like, hey guys, what do you want to do? Oh, whatever you want. And so like sometimes if you're sitting at a table and you have a main character at the table and you're like, man, this is like really getting annoying, you should probably like step up and try to not. If you get blasted out by that character, that's when you're leaning into the horror story part. But if you step up and you go, actually, I really would like to go left, not right. Oh, okay, cool. Most of the time, if you're playing at a decent table, you're going to have people that are not like, oh man, I hate that idea. I refuse to do this. We're not going that way. Like, it's a collaborative game. Hopefully, you're playing collaboratively. And that is one of the biggest things that you want to see in your TTRPGs is collaborative storytelling.
Yeah.
Any other like really bad things that you're like, this is an issue.
Yeah. I
You
wanted
guys
to bring
wanna-
up,
Yeah.
especially kind of going back to the horror story idea. I do see horror stories at times, especially that like are about the main character syndrome and stuff like that, where I sometimes wonder because it's like, oh man, the DM did everything for this character and hated me. And sometimes it's like, oh, okay, I can really see where you're coming from. But there's sometimes is a place where it's like, does that player just maybe care more about this game? Is that player maybe talking to the DM weekly and going, man, I want to be involved in your world. I want to be doing this or that. Here's this idea. Here's that idea. This would be really cool. Here's my thoughts here. You know, that DM, without trying to be a nasty, mean, evil person, will start making that character more of a main character just naturally because there's more to work with. They care more about their world. And there's almost a place where I'm like, is that totally wrong? Which I know I'm jumping into the next section a little bit here,
Yeah.
but like, is it wrong for a DM to be like, oh man, this character that gives me so much to work with and wants and cares and wants to be a part of this world, wants to do all this stuff, is okay, I'm going to make some of that stuff for him. And then the other character at the table, other characters at the table are like, oh my gosh, he's a main character and the DM's favoring him. And that does happen. The DM definitely does favor characters at times, you know, for different reasons.
DM is not God. He does have favorites.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, when I play with my wife, she is definitely my favorite. I give her whatever she wants. Everyone
What?
else
I
can.
This
really
is an
was not ready.
outrage. Don't you?
All right.
Don't you mean Kennedy?
Name drop.
But no,
Okay.
like absolutely. I didn't. Go ahead, Josiah. I'll let you.
Yeah, before we jump into the like what are some of the benefits of main characters too, I want to talk briefly from a different perspective as well. Back to actually the Harry Potter perspective that you were talking about of like Harry is like, I really don't want to be the main character. This isn't fun for like can we do something else? From a player's perspective, the main character syndrome can also be like a negative thing for the player who is playing the main character of
Mhm.
like man, I feel like I keep getting put into the spotlight. I like it's making all of the other characters think like all of the other people or players at this table feel differently about me. And it's like I do care about this world and I'm trying to like move our group along, but we keep just ending up doing my storylines, my plot
Yeah,
lines. I really just like,
Yeah.
can we I'm
And
trying to
even the,
highlight
like-
other the players.
Yeah, and even the pressure of, oh, I think that we should do this and being wrong and like leading players into a trap or things like that. And it's like, oh, I now have this responsibility. And so there
Right.
is one other thing that I think
You can't have an off day as a main character. Every day you have to be on
Well,
the top of your game because the story is
for
based on
sure.
you.
And you also feel bad. Like I've played in campaigns. I have a fairly strong personality and I emerge as the quote unquote main character at times. And I have been told in my whole D&D career over and over again that this is the worst thing ever and you can't do that. And so I spend most of my time like on eggshells going like somebody else make a decision. Like I refuse to make a decision because you guys will
Yeah.
just do what I say and that's apparently bad. So I can't do that. So you guys have to make a decision, you know, or I have to like sit here and pull
Yeah.
teeth until somebody says, okay, well, what about this? You know, and yeah, no. So I fully agree, Josiah. I think that is something where it's like you feel awkward in those positions. And even if like you aren't actually the main character, but you feel like you've had maybe too many spotlight moments and you're trying really hard to like give someone else a spotlight moment. And then you end up with another one and you're like, no, like, okay, I was trying really hard to like
Yeah.
pass that on. And then, yeah.
And it actually was just their one scene with you where we get emotional connection through you as the main character.
Yeah.
I will say one thing that I want to hit on with like problems with main characters before we move on disappear. Is I don't think that main characters happen in a vacuum, right? There is always more than one culprit. And sometimes that is the DM on accident of, oh man, Jack has just bought into my world and I want to do this. And sometimes it is not on accident. And that is, I think, a very dangerous place to be of like, oh yeah, I really love Josiah's character and his character concept for his backstory. That's way more fun than Jack's. So we're gonna like keep putting more plot things into Josiah's character backstory and into Josiah's character that really serve him. And you know, well,
Or
Josiah's
even
really good at
worse, my wife is playing and I'm going to favor her when it's not
Yeah.
even like a character reason or I think the story would go better
It
here.
actually
Yeah.
is
But
just
I like this person better than I like you. So therefore I'm going to, you know, give them the things that I want.
this is a diplomatic decision. I have to favor my wife in order for the rest of my life to go well.
Oh man.
Yes, the
Can't blame a guy. I
negotiator.
mean,
Yeah, so when I look at Jack, every time that his wife gets a extra thing at the D&D table, I'm like, what do I get? He's like, nothing. You have no long-term impact on my personal happiness. She
happy wife,
can make me
frustrated table,
Yeah.
but it's fine.
You can find another table. I can't find another
Absolutely.
wife.
And so, yeah, there are I think all of us agree that there are definitely problems that exist when when a main character comes out at your table. But as we have each alluded to a little bit, we don't believe that there should be no main characters. Like I said, some of the best stories ever told have these amazing main characters.
Most.
Yeah,
I
most.
would go so far as to say most have a
Yes.
protagonist, have a
Yeah.
main character.
Yes. And so there are definitely ways for the main character to play at a TTRPG table. You can create a main character in Dungeons and Dragons, and you can run a campaign that has a main character. That also allows you to personally create side characters, which is also super fun of having not the responsibility of being the
Right.
main character. And so, yeah, let's dive into the benefits of, hey, if we're running a campaign and there is a main character and we know that ahead of time, what are some of the benefits? And what are some of the benefits if we don't know ahead of time and one just pops up? What are some good things that can come of that? So I'll let you answer both. I would like you to do separate because you don't always get to
Wait.
control the
Run
scenario.
me through the separate questions again. One
Yeah.
more.
So sorry, I definitely changed up the question that we had agreed upon.
Yeah, no, we're good.
So what are the benefits of having a main character that you're aware of? Like, hey,
Yeah.
we're gonna run a campaign. Josiah, you're the main character. Jack and everyone else is gonna be side characters. Like the plot surrounds
Great place
Josiah.
to start.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know if I've ever seen that
That'd
actually
be very
happen.
interesting.
At
Anyways,
a
Yeah.
table.
and what's the
right?
benefits of the? What was the other question?
And what is
What happens?
What are some good things when a main character emerges? It's like,
Gotcha.
oh, well, Josiah is kind of just the main character now. Yeah.
I wanted to hop in real quick too at the beginning of all this and say just a few disclaimers that we talked about beforehand before we get too far out. We are talking about like, hey, we think there are some good aspects to having a main character in TTRPGs. And a lot of people would say, no, that never exists. That's not something that happens. There should be no main characters in TTRPGs. And I want to clarify one thing at the beginning. We are talking about smaller group sizes. If you have never played at a table smaller than 4 people, there's a good possibility that this would be really confusing advice. That you're like, what? Play with main? Like, there's no, like, everybody is kind of each getting their moment, each getting their spotlight, especially if you're playing with like 5, 6, 7, players at a table. Like, you probably should not have a main character. This is not like this should be every campaign, every D&D campaign should have at least one main character. No, that's not what we're talking about.
Your plot lines are just so much bigger when you have a big party anyways. It can't be we go do
It's-
this little
yeah.
thing. It's we're all going and it just has to
Yeah.
be.
And typically with those bigger parties, there is like a plot line that they are pursuing. Maybe, for example, the thing is more about the villain than any one individual character, and the whole group of characters stopping that villain and foiling that. So I do think that, that is something I want to clarify at the beginning before we really hop into this is at those smaller tables, when you have 2-player characters or 3-player characters, you've probably read books or watched movies where there are 2 main characters or 3 main characters, but rarely do you see beyond that because it's hard for us to really care about like this full perspective and flesh it out and how it relates with the world and the plot and everything else. But like, I mean, most buddy cop movies are 2 main characters. Like
Most
that's
romance
kind of the whole
movies
point.
are also 2-person.
Most romances. But then I've also, like, if you ever read the Stormlight Archives by Brandon Sanderson, you could argue that there's maybe more than that, but there definitely is 3 main characters. You have, Shallan, Dalinar, and Kaladin. And those 3 characters are about as main charactery as you can get. They don't even interact with each other through most of the first book. They're each on their own journeys doing their own thing. And I've seen, a live play that I really enjoy is the Dungeons of Drakkenheim campaign. And they have 3 characters. And yes, each one of them, depending on the episode you're watching, can feel a little more main charactery or it's what the group is doing. But I think that's a really good example where I don't think they would say, oh, any one of us is the main character. I don't think they think of it that way. But there are definitely times that we are concerned with one person's story and their story is what's driving the main plot forward. And sorry, Elijah just said spoiler for the Stormlight Archive in our group chat. And I'm
Got
like,
him.
no, that's not a spoiler.
They don't interact in the
sorry.
first book?
Yeah, I mean
That's
that's
a
a spoiler.
spoiler.
That's a
They
spoiler.
do interact.
So, he said
okay,
don't
whatever.
interact much. So
Yeah.
spoiler alert
Anyway.
for the
All right,
Stormlight
they
Whatever.
meet
Archive.
at the beginning of the
Spoiler
book.
alert also for Dungeons of Drakkenheim, as he
I
mentioned
don't
that
even
as
think
well.
that was it.
I didn't even give a plot beat for
No,
that.
not
Anyway,
at all.
Not interacted with
spoilers
either of
for
these
the
forms
Lord
of
of the
media.
Rings and Harry Potter coming up again. Anyway,
Yeah, no.
Oh, we're gonna talk about.
I
yeah.
wanted to
100%.
say, I think a cool example of this too is if Harry Potter were a D&D campaign versus if Lord of the Rings were a D&D campaign. Harry Potter, I think, would be a little bit rough to play in at times. It is all about Harry. to the extent that Ron pretty often complains. Why is it always about you? Why can't it be about me for once? Like
That
you
is, in
have
fact,
these moments.
his character arc in 3 different books.
Yes. Is him
Spoiler.
wanting to be the center of attention, and Harry being like, I didn't ask for my parents to die, and Ron being like, I'm glad your parents are dead. And like that, just they do that over and over again, and that would be,
And the
you could
second
run
time,
that.
it stopped being interesting, just so we're all clear.
You could run that in D&D, and you could do it well if you have players that have bought into it, and you kind of have that, and the player themselves isn't frustrated. Their character can be frustrated, but the player's not frustrated. That isn't the player of Ron's character being like, hey, and taking
Right.
Lord of the Rings as an example, then you see Frodo is clearly the main character. He must bear the ring to Mordor and throw it into the fires. Okay, main character syndrome. But then Aragorn is nearly equally a main character. Samwise would be one of the most fun characters ever to play in D&D. Like, he has so much passion and vitality. There are times that it is about Sam, as he goes into Minas Morgul, I believe is the name of the tower.
Close.
Carries Frodo out.
I don't know.
Spoiler alert for The Lord of the Rings.
Oh
we
my! I
we
said that.
prefaced the spoiler
Right,
alert.
I'm sorry, I forgot.
I don't understand how spoiler alerts work. Did that just mean they skip this episode? Because
I guess.
is it episode wide? Just go to the next one, I guess.
I do want to jump in on that. First of all, Boromir also complains that Frodo and Aragorn are the main characters, unless he is upset for several different reasons.
So please note, you will always have people who disagree with you that main character is a good thing, even if it is a good thing for your story.
Getting us back, though, a little bit to the question of like, hey, when this happens, right, it can be good to have that driving force, because there is not a more boring way to play D&D than when the DM is like, all right, so you have this option, this is going on, what do you want to do? And you get crickets, right? Nobody really wants to play at that table because it's like, well, I guess we can.
What do you want to do?
We want there is something awesome about like, everyone then turns their head a little bit and then is like,
Aragorn,
what do you think we should do?
Where should we go?
Yeah.
What do you say, ring bearer?
Yeah. And that is kind of awesome. Especially again in the small groups where there's 2 or 3 player characters, where you can then look at someone and say, all right, I think that we should go this way. The other player thinks that we should go this way. What do you think? And make a decision. I think that the focus and kind of being able to put the spotlight onto a character is really nice. It is kind of relaxing a little bit as a DM, as someone who played in a campaign with Jack and Josiah, and Jack kind of became a little bit of a main character. There were some pretty cool moments where I just was like, all right, Jack's about to come up with some insane thing that he's wanted to do for a while, and we're going to make a plot line out of it. And it led to him getting a super cool artifact, killing a dragon, and, kind of launched us into the rest of the campaign.
Did I technically kill the dragon? He last hit the dragon, right?
I last hit him, but I went down, I think, once or twice.
I think you went down twice in that combat, for sure.
You last hit my
and then I got
you last hit my boss too.
That was because you went down in that combat.
Let's just say, as far as satisfying combats, not a one in this whole campaign. As the wrong person always killed the BBEG.
I would say some of those were satisfying.
I would say
I mean,
the
like,
end of
just
Strahd,
for killing.
Strahd was like,
not even Strahd himself. I'm Vampire. That was a very satisfying.
That's fair.
fight.
Strahd was not, because it was Godfrey, and it was like, oh,
I know.
well, that I was like that. I also killed my own villain with the PC that I'm running. Well,
At no
that
point did
sucks.
I ever get to kill the villain. My character is still. Anyways, we'll talk about Tenth Amathia some other time. Back to what we were talking about before.
Yeah. Main characters. Josiah, what you got?
Yeah.
Pros.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree with what you were saying, Elijah, about it being a driving force. I do think being able to say, "Hey, we're going this way," is super helpful. I'll also point out, not every character is like built to be a protagonist, to be the one who makes decisions. Some characters really function better as a support. And if there's not really anybody to support, you kind of feel like, I don't really know what I'm supposed to do. I guess I'll do something, but it's just gonna, I'll support that guy, but he's also trying to support. So this really isn't gonna work. Like, you kind of, I mean, that's like, those are more
But I have played at
combat
tables.
terms.
Yeah, I have played at tables where it feels like everyone is trying to be kind and respectful and support the other players, and nobody's doing anything. And it's like, maybe we just need somebody to be quote unquote rude, quote unquote a main character, and do something. Yeah.
Or here's an interesting thing that we didn't talk about. What about the scenarios when everybody dumped charisma? You ended up with a party where nobody has any sort of decent charisma stats, and you're just like, well, it's gonna completely break verisimilitude, but I guess I have to do the talking for the group because somebody has to, even though I have a charisma of 11, and we're just gonna make it work, I guess. It is hard when you don't always have somebody to rely on. Having that person that you can be like, yeah, this is the person, they're going. And like to like that's just in playing. Some of those stories are really, really rewarding when they are told that way. Being able to follow like from one point all the way through to the end of it means that your story, your campaign, your plot line has this like huge amount of connectivity and purpose to the whole thing. It's not like we did this little thing, then we went off and did this little thing, and we went off in this little thing. Like, I haven't watched One Piece to its entirety, but like it's more than 1,000 episodes, and you're following one character's dream and vision for what he's gonna do, and that's somehow a entertaining enough idea that it lasts throughout the whole thing, and you still understand what's going on. That was a really main plot point for our for the main character for the main campaign that we run. Was we had to get this character from point A to point B, but that point B was really amalgamous. So it was just like, we're going to keep moving him forward, but everything flowed to those ends.
Yeah. I think I want to hop in here too and say something that really can be good that comes out of this is there is a place where there's a reason stories often have a main character. And yeah, it's that we can, as an audience, latch on to one perspective. We do that better than latching on to multiple perspectives, stuff like that. And it's your avenue of experiencing the world. But it's not just that. Like, even as an author, there's a reason you only do one main character typically. And that's because, like, there is a place where, like, the story is often driven forward, especially, like there are some stories where it's reactionary, it's happening to, and you're reacting to stuff, but most stories are driven forward by the characters, but specifically often a character and their desires and their passions and what they're pursuing and things like that. And like, I think there is a place where we sometimes are like, oh man, we're going to step into D&D. No one's the main character. No one's above each other. And it's like, well, no, we don't. Like, yeah, that is bad for a character to be above another character, or for a player to be above another player. Like, that's not at all what we're advocating for. We don't think that's a good thing in the slightest. But there is a place where it's like, man, having a story that is driven forward, that is some of the most fun D&D you're ever going to play.
Mhm.
Like having characters that want to do things, and you can switch it off. Like when we say there should be a main character, we're not saying there only needs to be one main character. You can have arcs where you're the main character and somebody else is, takes a back seat, and then you flip-flop. But there often are characters too that are more suited to the world and the story that the DM is trying to tell. And I would say that's the case. We talked about Tethamathi a little bit. The character I was playing in that campaign, a big part of it was about him and his journey. And that was where a big part of the campaign started, was with that. And that didn't mean Josiah's character didn't matter. Josiah's character was intimately connected to it. There was, a love triangle going on, or, between them and another character, kind of. Wasn't really a love triangle, but block
It
desires
didn't
either
last
way.
long. No.
Love
Um,
square, I
a love
guess.
square, I guess, with
I love
betrothed
you.
marriages, but they liked other people and
I love
different stuff like
X.
that. And it was fascinating. Like, there definitely was a place where everyone was involved in that, but it quickly became apparent at times that, like, it was Cyrus was this noble going through these trials at the beginning, and Fearless, which Cyrus was my character, Fearless was Josiah's character, was the witness to those trials. And he was there to basically be like, yeah, he completed them. And there was this really interesting interplay where, yeah, my character was the quote unquote main character a lot of the time because I'm doing the trial. I'm the one pursuing this stuff. But that didn't make Josiah's experience like, oh, this is awful and terrible. I hate this campaign, because he was like, it made sense within the narrative that he's not the one pursuing this stuff, but he's allowed to help me. And so, he's coming alongside and helping. He still had moments, he had growth, he had, all this stuff happen to him. And Elijah is an incredible DM. He didn't let it just be about Cyrus. He brought in arcs that were all about Fearless at times. And it was cool to see Cyrus try to become a support character. It was cool to see Fearless stretch and try to become a main character. But then there also was a comfortability that they snapped back to, which was, yeah, one is more of a support character, one is more of a driving character. And we'll get to this later, but main character is a bit of a buzzword, and it may not even be the best word for some of this stuff. Like, specifically, it might even be better to say there's a driving character at times, and that can swap off, and more support characters. And sometimes you swap those characters around. You probably should do that at times, but it's also okay if one character throughout a campaign tends to be the driving character. And I think alleviating some of that guilt off my shoulders as a player, that, oh my gosh, I'm always the driving character. I have to stop being the driving character. Somebody else has to do it. And then, I'm like, I'm not going to make a decision at this next crossroads because everyone's just going to go with what I say. And I'm going to force them, like, they gotta, like, I'm going to stop being the main character. And then you get to that next crossroads and nobody wants to make a decision, because the truth of the matter is they're enjoying this game as support characters. They don't want to be the main character. They're having fun playing support characters. That's what they want to do. And the only time that's an issue is when they don't want to do that. When they want to be playing more of a main character. And then you need to be respectful and know those things and step back. And for some people, you need to hear it's okay to be a support character. If you are having fun doing that, you are okay. You don't have to do more. And I think that I don't know. I think
I will caveat exactly what you said but include the DM in that statement as well. If the DM is not having fun being a supporting role to your character's story, where I don't have any control of the world anymore, it's just whatever you want to do. That's what we're doing.
Or where we're headed in the world. Yeah, right. For sure.
That's not great either.
Yeah.
Totally.
And I think that it is really important to yes, that there is a place where it is good to have different driving characters. And I think the arc thing that you mentioned briefly is really important. Like, there are times that, like, hey, you need to be the main character here. Um, a prime example of this would be like, hey, the DM kidnapped a PC. And so, this person is no longer at the table, or they're, playing another player character. Awesome, super fun. Um, they cannot be the main character now. They're not here, right? And so giving a spot where, like, hey, you can take away the main character. The main character does not have to be here in this moment, right? Or, hey, we're dealing with your family, and, like, you are struggling a lot with the, my father died, and, I'm going to avenge him. And you go, and you have this character arc where, okay, you're investigating your father's murder. No, I am not going to let someone else step up and be like, well, I'll head up this investigation. No, you will not. I will, because it's my dad, and that's my moment. And so, knowing, like, there are times when it is someone else's moment to step up at the table, um and that it is okay for them to be the main character here, to get their moment in the sun of, like, yeah, you got to do your thing, because this is about you, I think is huge.
I think something that we did not talk at all about before, but what's interesting is as we've been talking about this of like doing these supporting roles and like having multiple protagonists, sometimes I've actually seen NPC main characters where it's like, oh, we have an NPC that we're escorting, and his involvement with the world is actually like the main reason that we're doing this. But we all care about this person, so we're supporting them, and we're doing all of the combat. The NPC is not super involved in that. We're doing that. We're moving forward. We're making the decisions, but like it's for the purpose of this NPC. And I've even seen that done well, where those escort missions, none of you are really the main character in that escort mission,
Mm,
but that NPC is the main character of that arc. And
mhm.
it might be that you have that NPC for the whole character or for the whole campaign, but it also just works to do that for short stints
Yeah.
sometimes. It's just an interesting thought that I
I,
had.
I do kind of like that though. I remember when I was playing my first character ever. At the very end of that campaign, there was this really fun moment where like he, used these telepathic abilities to somewhat calm everyone's emotions in this fight, this kind of civil war that was going on. And after that, Elijah, who was DMing, had this NPC that he had worked on and written a ton about that stood up and gave this speech. And that was what kind of cinched, what my character, who was a young child, had done. And my character couldn't have really given that speech. And honestly, none of the other characters that were playing were. One of them was the type of player who could have, but he wasn't really playing a character that would have. And the other two were pretty quiet, or three were pretty quiet. Um, I don't remember.
There was
Yeah.
three. There was
Yeah,
five total. Not important.
five total. Anyway, doesn't matter. But I remember like when you were describing that, Josiah, I was like, yeah, that's how I felt in that moment. I was like, I'm kind of playing a supporting character here. Like I had a moment where I was probably the main character, but like in this moment, Elijah's character is kind of taking center stage as the DM, Elijah's NPC. Um, and it was a really cool moment. It ended up really clinching this cinematic scene and the campaign. That was the note we kind of went out on with that campaign, and it was really cool. And I was like, man, I really enjoyed that, even though the final speech wasn't given by a player character. It wasn't like, oh man, one of us was in the spotlight bringing all this together. It was the DM's character, but it still was really cool. And another moment where like Godfrey and
I was
and
just gonna say
Distraught was
Godfrey.
like
It's very
there
similar.
was this main character moment that deeply impacted us afterwards as characters. And yet it very much was like Godfrey's moment. And even Godfrey getting the final hit in on Strahd and stuff like that. Like there
Which
there are
that's a great
moments.
example of his arc too, because he wasn't the main character for the whole or
Mhm.
for even a large period of time, but just like for this little segment, we got him, we ran him through, and then he wrapped up his thing, and it was impactful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I
I just wanted to say, as players, those moments hit hard and they hit well. They didn't feel like, "Oh, I want to be the center of attention." It was like, this world feels so real and breathing and alive. And that's awesome. Anyway, what were you going to say, Elijah?
I was gonna say, like, I would say all of the moments that you just mentioned are, yeah, like Josiah said, it's for an arc. Like the NPC that stepped up at the end of that campaign and did a speech is uh very much not, like, was not in the campaign for most of the time. Like I think they met him maybe 3 or 4 sessions ago, and like that is okay. Like there is a time when like uh, DMs don't feel like your NPCs can't be the main character at certain points. You should probably not have a DMPC that is the main character. And it's like, oh yeah, this is Aragorn, and he's invincible. He deals 1 billion damage in combat. He's super charismatic, and he's the best at everything.
He
That
has this
that will
amulet that summons massive armies, and
Yeah.
they come and join on, and they just end the combat for you every time.
Yeah, and like
Great.
that there's definitely a line, right? But there are some really cool things that you can do when I for the speech in that campaign with Jack as a child, like I did that as a like, hey, this guy steps in and you realize that like he is kind of the main character. Like you hadn't put pieced everything together, but I was like, hey, he's the guy that like has been needing to step up. And so like you kind of got this moment that kind of worked out for the campaign. That doesn't mean that he needed to be there the whole time soaking up everything that they learned. And there are, that happens in life, right? Like I I go through life and I find I'm like, oh, I'm like really doing this. And it's like, oh, I'm not the main character right here. Like someone else is. And that is okay. I think that that is actually a lot of fun. And for me, like I wouldn't recommend like, oh yeah, I would always put in a NPC that is going to be your main character.
Always?
uh, yeah, I
Can
definitely
I
wouldn't. Yeah.
I was just going to say, this is a side story. This isn't really even all that related to D&D. A good friend of mine, and I would even say a little bit of a mentor, um, once told me, as he had grown up and had kids and became a dad, he began to see his life differently. It was no longer about being the main character and what he would do in his life. It was like oftentimes I found myself standing in the background, um, watching my kids and be the main character and supporting them. I was now their dad. Rarely is the dad in the TV show the main character. They take this supporting role. And he's like, and there's a place where accepting that has brought so much joy, that I am their dad in this, scene, that I stand in the background, support them, push them on, cheer their dreams on, and don't have to always do whatever it is that I think I ought to be doing as the main character. And he's like, I found so much peace in being that. I just think that's kind of interesting. And I think
Yeah.
to tie that back in with D&D, like having that heart as a player character, like as the player at the table of like supporting and being like, hey, I will take the role on of support here because I want to see your dream succeed. Um, but then again, there are times in D&D where when nobody is really pursuing very much, it can be even more helpful in the opposite aspect for somebody to be like, I'll take on the role of the main character. I'll push the plot forward. I'll have the hard things happen to my character. Not because I need the attention, not because I'm unwilling to give it up to others, but because I think that this group, especially when you're playing with new players or shy players, like, wants somebody to push the plot forward, wants somebody to make those decisions so that they can be a part of a really fun and active story.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Practical application. Okay. Getting back to some of our questions. When a main character arises, right? And you are playing and you're like, hey, this character has been kind of the center of attention. I want to know, like, hey, what should I do? Right? I know that Josiah is really excited about this one. So I'm gonna see this up. So what is the first thing that I should do if I have a main character in my story, Josiah?
Yeah. I would say the first thing that you should do is ask the question why. Why do you have a main character emerging? Or why is there a main character in your story? What got you here? What is the reason that this feels like a main character? What is going on? Because a lot of the times your answer to that question will immediately change what you do about it, how you deal with it, or if you just do nothing, it's actually not a problem. like so first off, asking that question, why? Because sometimes it's for story reasons. Like if we said that, yeah, actually for like Godfrey in that Strahd campaign, he feels like the main character. Well, yeah, this is like his arc. We're following the train, like we're following his plot line. We're gonna see it out to the end. Like this is his character's storyline. Obviously, he's gonna feel like a little bit of a main character. And in those scenarios, you usually don't really have to do much. Like it's okay. It will sort of just naturally no longer feel like the main character when you're no longer doing their plot line. And in a case where it's not just an arc though, where it's, hey, for this whole campaign, it feels like we're going after their storyline. Well, if that's the way you feel, and if that's creating a problem for you where characters are getting overshadowed, where it feels like there's favoritism there, or it feels like things are going on, sometimes in those scenarios, what you want to do is just as a DM, make an adjustment to where the story's going. Throw a wrench in the spokes. Hey, someone beats you to it and the villain is dead. You're going a different direction. Like I don't know that I've ever seen that work well, but you know what I mean? Like sometimes
Mhm.
if you're just like, hey,
Or even,
this is a really negative direction. Let's go
yeah,
somewhere else.
or even like you get a letter, your mother's sick. You guys need to drop stuff and go figure that out. Or your family has been killed. You need to go drop stuff and go figure that out. Or your beloved has been, captured. You need to drop stuff and go figure that out. That immediately
Hire an
shifts.
army.
An army.
Hire an
Spoiler
army.
alert for Tethmathia.
I hate
Um,
vampires.
um, but yeah, like it shifts the tone. And, to spell out that example, I know we made a reference to it. That in that campaign, that was where Kyrus and Fearless, those two characters we were talking about, had been pursuing the trials. It had been about Kyrus for quite some time. Elijah, as a really good DM, threw a note that in front of Fearless that said, hey, that girl that you've been pursuing and really like and can't quite figure out how to, dancing around the whole thing, she's captured, and you by somebody, a villain that we kind of left earlier, without dealing with. um you need to do something about that. And
I
that
was
immediately
pissed.
took the focus off of Kyrus and put it
Yeah.
onto Fearless. And that next arc was Fearless's arc, even though Kyrus killed his big bad evil guy at the end.
Yeah,
of it
you killed my
because
guy.
I should have
Whatever.
found a way to heal you somehow, so you could have shot him.
Had we started doing last words yet? Had we incorporated that homebrew rule? I can't remember.
No,
I don't remember. I
I
think it was
remember
right
he
after
did.
that we started it.
I think he did say something.
I
though,
vaguely remember doing some
but
last words. Anyways,
This
DMs,
is
consider
years
doing
ago
last
at this
words.
point now.
Yeah.
Fun stuff. Additional help. Never worry about last hits again, because you can just do last words. Anyways, that aside. Yeah, so I think there's a lot of benefits to asking that why question, because there's also like it could be entirely outside of for story reasons why this person feels like a main character. We talked a little bit earlier about, hey, maybe you just have a table of quiet players, and you have one player that understands D&D well. You have one player who cares more about this world than the rest of the players. You have one character who like knows how to move the story forward. That character sometimes just ends up feeling like the main character, and you have to decide whether that's a problem or not, because sometimes it's like, actually I kind of need them to be the main character, and it's not really hurting anybody. It's actually helpful because somebody has to make the decisions and move us forward, because if he's not the main character, we're not going anywhere. And I think everybody feels that pressure. And so sometimes it's not a problem, and other times you will have, I mean, we talked a little bit about problem players. Sometimes people just want the spotlight and they're just gonna hog it over and over. It's like, hey, I don't want to go that way. We're doing this thing because I built my character to do these type. And it's like, well, in that scenario, your best bet is to have a conversation with the player. We've talked about how to deal with problem players in the past. Go give that a listen. Like it just looks different when you're no longer worried about a story problem. You're worried about a player problem. Okay, this is a problem. My player doesn't want to play the game that we're trying to play. He's ruining the game for the rest of the table. And that just creates a different environment, a completely different table. And you got to be willing to have those conversations.
I think there's a place too where I feel like a lot of problems arise, like maybe even just as many, from people deciding that there's a problem. Like you hear, and I think this is what really, I was one of the people really pushing for us to make this episode. And I think this is why I really wanted this, was because I was like,
you're saying there's a problem with main character.
Jack is the main character.
Yeah, no,
and so
I
we're
am
doing this episode because he decided we wanted to do it.
I will be honest. I tend to play main
spoiler
characters.
alert for real life.
And I hear about online all the time that this is the wrong way to play D&D. And so I've been like, of course, it's prideful, it's arrogant. Why would I assume that I'm the main character? And so I try really hard not to be the main character. And I spend a ton of effort into being quiet and trying to set other people up and trying to nudge them along and get them to talk and everything. And it ends up with a lot of awkward silences at times. It ends up with like, and that's, neither here nor there. But like there is this place where it's like, man, I feel like I have robbed myself from enjoying D&D at times because I'm trying so hard not to be a main character. I'm trying so hard not to make the story about me, not to, let my personality kind of pull everyone towards something. When the truth of the matter is, the most fun that the three of us have ever had playing D&D was on a character that I just kind of didn't care that much about if he was a main character or not. And like, we all had fun. And I think that was the thing that really clicked in my head, is I was like, no, you guys enjoyed that campaign too. And I played a character that was a bit of a main character for a good portion of it. There were many times where other characters had their spotlight, and I wanted to celebrate those things. I remember being devastated that I got the last hit in on Jorian, because I was like, no, like they had 1v1'd it up to this point. I was running around killing minions and going like, you got this. And I remember being really frustrated about that. And like, there was this place where it was like, no, like, I think that I want to stop letting that fear of being that problem player, of being the main character syndrome player, and say, hey, I'm going to build characters that are involved in the world, that have great plot hooks, that could be considered main character, because those are fun characters. And everybody at the table really enjoys them when they're played respectfully and well. Yes, a problem player is going to be a problem player. If you put them in the table, they're going to, if they want to be a main character, they're going to have issues. But they're going to have issues often in other ways. I don't think it's the act of wanting to be a main character or building a character that's more suited to be a main character. That's the issue. I think it's the player and how they're playing him and how they're interacting. It typically is from them trying to steal the spotlight from other people, or them trying to, uh, force other people's moments, to go past more quickly so that they can get to what they want to do. Like, those are the issues. That's just being disrespectful. That's not being kind or supportive towards other people. So I'm not actually saying like you have to be a main character, but I feel like, don't I feel like it has robbed me of a lot of good characters, that I've tried so hard to not be a main character because I've been told how bad it is. And I think there's just this place where it's like, don't decide for somebody else that this is a problem. If you're a DM sitting at the table and you're like, well, this character is getting the spotlight a lot, don't make that decision for the whole table. Now, you can use your social deduction skills. You can look around and see, oh, wow, that player was really crushed when this player stepped in and said something.
Nat
And
20
when
on
they,
social deduction.
when they, stepped in and took the spotlight from them, that really took the wind out of that player's sails. You're allowed to use your eyes. You're allowed to do that. But don't be like, if the only reasoning you can find for why that's a problem is they're having the spotlight too much, that might not be a problem. That might be the players you're playing with. That might just be that the other players enjoy being a supporting cast. I really enjoy being a supporting cast at times. It's super fun to play a Samwise Gamgee. It is super fun to play a Hermione Granger. Like, those are compelling and interesting and fun characters to play. And it kind of takes the weight off your shoulders. You don't have to be driving the plot forward. You can be sitting in the back seat, enjoying this, being clever and fun, using your mind to think about how to support other characters. It's a fun play style. But
That's the
it's
only reason
also,
I like D&D, because I can show up and not care and just figure it out. Jack will run the campaign for me.
yeah.
And I love that you can do either, right? If you want to sit down at your D&D table and make 7 main characters, and all of you have these big motivations and you want to do these big huge things, that's okay, right? D&D and TTRPGs are built for that sort of thing, right? Like, if you can build one main character for your player character, everyone else can too. And don't be afraid to give up the reins when it's not your turn to be in the spotlight, right? And hopefully you want all of your friends at the table to also get that spotlight, to also have those cool moments. I remember a moment when I was playing recently at our Wednesday campaign that Jack is running for me right now. One of the players that was sitting next to me got the finishing blow, and he's like, I would like to put my axe into this character and then turn them and be a free shot for Elijah to actually finish them off. And it was that was really cool. Mechanically, they're still dead. It didn't, doesn't actually matter, but it was hey, you gave me a moment. And that was really awesome. This player has also rolled an insane amount of natural 20s in combat. And we've
Genuinely
watched it.
blown away.
He is
He's
statistically
playing a
miracle.
Gloomstalker Ranger, and so he can do mini smites on stuff, and the amount he just crits and does so much damage, and it's dang.
We love you,
They
Alex.
say God doesn't
we
show
love you, Alex.
favoritism.
Yeah.
But then I see people who get nat 20s all the time.
Yeah.
And I can't roll above a 12.
Yeah. And also that is, I think, a an aspect as well of sometimes a main character doesn't emerge. I'm gonna end with this story of one of my good friends is had played probably almost every table that I played at or that I DM'd for in college, except for the campaign of me, Jack, and Josiah. But she was always invited. Shout out Julia if you're listening to this. Great, hi. Julia made awesome characters. She would come to me and she's like, "Okay, so I was thinking of like playing a necromancer, um, and she hates all humans because she was enslaved by humans when she was younger, but she doesn't know that the reason that she was freed is because of a great human effort." And I was like, "That's amazing! Great, you have an awesome character." And every time that Julia ever rolled dice, it didn't go well for her. And I love you dearly. She's a good friend. Um, I don't, I cannot think of a time where in a regular session of multiple skill checks, multiple attacks, multiple rolls, Julia ever averaged above 10 in her rolls. Not even like, oh yeah, she like averaged out 210. No, like she would roll twos and fours and sixes and fives and just nothing good. And she would change dice. She would change how she rolled. She just, for some reason, luck was not on her side. Right?
Please note, we did not count up the dice and get the average.
No,
but
we did not do all the math, but it would like surely, and you know,
yeah,
that is devastating, right? And sometimes you determine you're like, all right, I'm ready for like to step into my spotlight, and the game is still unfortunately a game of chance, and the rolls don't work, and you miss 8 times in this combat with this guy that has been antagonizing you specifically, right? That is okay. There are times in life where you're like, all right, I'm ready to step up to the plate, and things just don't go your way. I think that it is interesting story wise to then see how your character reacts to that. See if they're devastated by that or really glad that, hey, my end goals were still accomplished. Um, don't let your player goals defeat your characters. And I think that is kind of an underlying thing that I really care about with main characters. It's like, hey, if you want to be a main character, awesome. Don't let your character goal interfere with all of the other players. You are playing a game. And so I think it would be a really big shame if you didn't let everyone else have fun while you were playing a game. Don't hog the controller. Don't hog the spotlight. Um, Play D&D. It is a collaborative storytelling game. That means everyone at the table, DMs included, and that means DMs, you have to share the story as well, is telling a story together. Thank you so much for listening today to Tales About the Table. As always, we don't claim to have all the answers. Some of us want more main characters, some of us want less. Obviously, this is just some of the things that we like to put into our D&D games and our TTRPGs. Yeah, if you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe. Leave us a comment if you believe that you should have a main character in your campaign, or your favorite story about a main character that popped up in your campaign. Again, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next week on Friday. See ya.